You have felt it before. That quiet, unexplainable pull in your chest that had no logical reason to be there. That moment when something inside you said stop, and you almost listened. Almost. There are conversations happening around you, through you, and inside you every single day that most people walk right past because life got too loud, too fast, and too full of noise to hear anything subtle anymore. But what if the most important voice you will ever hear has been trying to reach you for months, maybe years, and you have been too busy, too broken, or too afraid to recognize it? Stay with me until the very end. What you hear today may be the answer you have been waiting for. Subscribe, like, and don't let anyone you love miss this message. There is something living inside you that has never been satisfied. And the terrifying part is, you cannot explain it to anyone. Not properly. Not in a way that makes sense when everything around you looks fine. You have tried. You filled your days with enough noise to drown it out. You built routines that kept you moving so you would not have to sit still long enough to feel it. You achieved things, real things, things that were supposed to matter, and for a moment, maybe a brief moment, the feeling would ease. And then it would come back, quietly, persistently, like a knock on a door you have been pretending not to hear. This is not depression. This is not ingratitude. This is something older than both of those words. Something that existed in you long before life got complicated, long before you started becoming whoever the world needed you to be. Most people spend decades running from this feeling because sitting with it is one of the most uncomfortable things a human being can do. It asks questions that do not have easy answers. It points at parts of your life that you have worked very hard to make peace with, and quietly refuses to accept that peace as a final word. That restlessness is not your enemy. It is the first sign. It is something trying to get your attention, not to punish you, not to unsettle you without reason, but because there is a direction your life has not yet moved in that it was always meant to reach. The noise you have been using to silence it was never going to work, because what is speaking to you from that place does not raise its voice. It simply waits, and it will keep waiting with infinite patience until you are finally still enough to listen. At some point, you have to stop blaming the circumstances. You have been here before, not in this exact place, not with these exact people. But hey, this feeling, this outcome, this particular brand of disappointment that arrives wearing a different face every time, but somehow always delivers the same wound to the same place inside you. And the first time it happened, you called it bad luck. The second time, you called it coincidence. By the third time, something in you already knew. But knowing something and being willing to face it are two entirely different acts of courage. The pattern in your life is not random. The relationships that ended the same way. The opportunities that collapsed at the same point. The trust you extended to different people that was broken in almost identical ways. None of that is the universe being cruel to you. All of it is the universe being persistent with you. There is something you have not yet looked at directly. Something you have been carrying so long it has become invisible to you. A belief, a fear, a wound so old you have mistaken it for personality. And because you have not faced it, life keeps recreating the conditions that might finally make you turn around and see it. The lesson was never about the other person. It was never about the job, the city, the timing, or the circumstances. Those were just a classroom. You were always a subject. And here is what changes everything. The moment you stop asking why this keeps happening to you, and start asking what this keeps trying to show you, the pattern begins to lose its power. Not immediately, not painlessly, but it begins. What has been repeating in your life is not a curse. It is an unfinished conversation between you and the deepest parts of yourself, and it will keep finding new ways to reach you until you finally sit down, get quiet, and listen to what it has been trying to say all along. You did everything right, and it still did not work. That is the part nobody prepares you for, the part that does not fit neatly into any explanation. You prepared, you waited, You hope with a kind of hope that costs something, the kind that makes you vulnerable in ways you would never admit to anyone. And then the door closed. Not slowly, not with warning. It simply closed, and you were left standing in front of it wondering what you did wrong. And the answer, the one that is hardest to accept, is nothing. You did nothing wrong. But here's what nobody tells you about closed doors. They are not all the same. Some doors close because the timing was wrong. Some closed because the person you were in that moment was not yet the person that opportunity required. And some doors, the ones that hurt the most, the ones you grieved the longest, closed because something that could not yet be seen from where you were standing was waiting on the other side that would have cost you more than you could have afforded to pay. You were not rejected. You were redirected. And the difference between those two things is not just a matter of perspective. It is a matter of what you do next. The door that closed was not the end of the story. It was the end of a chapter you were trying to force, one that was never written for the person you are still in the process of becoming. What felt like loss was protection. What felt like failure was refusal. Something greater than your circumstances refusing to let you settle for a version of your life that was smaller than what you were actually capable of living. The right door does not require you to break yourself trying to hold it open. I want to pause here and ask you something personal. Which one of these signs have you been experiencing without fully recognizing it for what it was? Tell me in the comments, even if it is just a number. 1 through 4. You might be surprised what comes up when you actually sit with that question. Think back. Go all the way back. There was someone, maybe more than one, a person who appeared in your life at a moment so precise, so unexpectedly perfect, that even now, years later, you cannot fully explain how it happened or why it happened when it did. Not a week earlier. Not a month later. Exactly then. At the moment you needed it most and had stopped expecting it entirely. Maybe it was a conversation that lasted 20 minutes with someone you never saw again. But those 20 minutes said something to you that the people closest to you had never been able to reach. Maybe it was a friendship that found you in the middle of the loneliest season of your life, not because you went looking for it, but because somehow, without explanation, it simply arrived. Most people file these moments under luck, under coincidence, under being in the right place at the right time. But if you are being completely honest with yourself, and this is a moment for honesty, you know that explanation has never felt like enough. Because the timing was too specific. The words were too accurate. The presence was too precisely what you needed for it to have been accidental. There are people who were sent into your life, not permanently, not always, but intentionally, deliberately, placed at the exact coordinates of your pain or your confusion or your knee-breaking point with a level of precision that chance simply does not possess. And if that is true, if even one person in your life arrived with that kind of timing, then something has been paying attention to you far more closely than you have ever given it credit for. You were never as alone in this as you believed. Your mind can be talked into almost anything. But your body has never learned how to lie. Think about the last time you ignored a feeling that lived somewhere below your throat and above your stomach. That tightening, that subtle but unmistakable signal that something was wrong or something was right, long before any logical explanation was available to confirm it. You probably overrode it. Most people do, because the mind is loud and persuasive and very good at constructing reasons why the feeling should be ignored. But the feeling was right. It almost always is. There have been moments in your life when your body responded to something your conscious mind had not yet processed. A room you walked into that made you immediately uneasy before a single word was spoken. A decision that felt physically wrong even though every rational argument pointed toward yes. A moment of completely unexpected stillness that settled over you in the middle of a situation that should have been crushing you, a calm so deep and so inexplicable that it stopped you mid-breath. That calm was not denial. That unease was not paranoia. Those tears that arrived without invitation, during a song you had heard 100 times or a conversation that seemed ordinary on the surface, those were not weakness. They were information. There was something moving through you that was trying to make itself known through the only channel it knew you could not easily shut down. Your body is the most honest thing about you. It does not perform. It does not protect your ego. It does not tell you what you want to hear. It simply responds to truth, to danger, to grace, to the presence of something that matters, with a precision that the thinking mind spends years trying to replicate and never quite manages. The next time it speaks, do not explain it away. Do not wait for logic to validate what you already physically know. Something is communicating with you through the most direct channel available. The question has never been whether it is speaking. The question is whether you are finally ready to listen. You have buried it more than once. You told yourself it was not practical. You told yourself the window had passed, that too many years had gone by, that people like you, with responsibilities like yours, with a history like yours, do not get to want things like that anymore. And for a while, the burial held. Life stayed loud enough, full enough, demanding enough to keep it quiet. And then it came back. Not dramatically, not with any kind of announcement. Just quietly, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, or in that fragile space between sleeping and waking. It was simply there again. The same thought, the same pull, the same vision of something you have never been able to fully explain to another person, because every time you have tried, it sounded smaller out loud than it felt on the inside. Most people spend their entire lives treating that persistence as a flaw, as proof that they are impractical, unrealistic, unable to fully accept the life they have been given. But that is not what persistence is. That is not what it means when something refuses to die inside you, no matter how many times you have tried to let it go. What keeps returning to you is not a distraction from your real life. It is a signal about what your real life was always supposed to contain. The dreams that survive decades of silence, suppression, and self-doubt are not the weak ones. They are the ones with the deepest roots. And the fact that this particular thought, this vision, this calling, this thing you have never been able to fully bury, has outlasted every reason you gave it to disappear is not a coincidence. It is still here because it was always meant to be part of where you are going. Not where you have been, where you are still going. The persistence was never the problem. The persistence was always a point. There was a moment, and you remember it even if you have never spoken about it to anyone, where everything around you was falling apart, and something inside you went completely still. Not numb, not in denial, still. A stillness so deep and so unexpected that it almost frightened you, because it made no sense given what you were facing. The situation had not changed. The problem had not been solved. The loss was still real. The uncertainty was still total. The ground beneath you was still gone. And yet, something held. You could not manufacture that. You could not have produced that kind of peace through willpower or positive thinking or any amount of mental effort. It arrived on its own. It settled over you like something being placed there deliberately. And in that moment, even if only for a few seconds, you knew, without being able to explain how you knew, that you were not alone in what you were carrying. That peace was not a coincidence. It was not your mind protecting itself. It was not the temporary relief of exhaustion mistaken for calm. It was a presence, real, specific, and directed entirely at you in that moment. The most honest communication you have ever received, delivered not in words but in the one language that cannot be faked or argued with or intellectualized away. We have talked today about restlessness, about patterns, about closed doors and the people who arrived at impossible moments, and the body that knew before the mind did and the dream that refused to die. And every single one of those signs was pointing here, to this, to the truth that something has been with you through all of it, not watching from a distance, not intervening only in the dramatic moments, but present, quietly, consistently, undeniably present. You were never as forgotten as you felt. You were never as alone as the silence suggested. And the peace that found you in your worst moment was not an accident of biology or psychology. It was an answer to every question you were too afraid to ask out loud. And now that you have heard it, truly heard it, The only thing left is to decide what you do with the knowing. Before you close this, I need you to do one thing. Think of one moment in your life where something happened that had no logical explanation. One moment where life seemed to be speaking directly to you. Write it below, because someone else reading your comment tonight may need to hear exactly what you experience.